2008. Talia Lautman, born in 1990 in Cleveland, grew up as a cherished granddaughter of this strong-willed woman. Talia is a senior in Stern College and serves as the Vice President of Shame. Following Talia's words, I invite President Richard Joel to recite Akel Malay Rachman. We will conclude tonight's program with a candlelighting ceremony led by Zevi Weisinger. Zevi is the great-grandson of Pesca Friedman, a survivor of Bergen-Belsen. Talia.
I want to take you all back to my 10th grade year of high school. My typical Friday was like any other rush before Shabbos, however with one little difference. See, my father didn't want his mother, my Oma, to spend any Shabbos alone. So every Friday, about 20 minutes before Shabbos, I would drive over to her house in order to bring her back to my house. The scene would play out in the following way. I would open up her garage door, walk into her house, and so as not to scare her, say loudly, "Hi, Oma, I'm here." She would either be in the kitchen packing up some cookies or cooking for me and my little brother, or upstairs putting in the last few items into her suitcase. In one hand, I would grab her suitcase, and with my other hand, I would link arms with her and slowly walk her to my car. I would help her climb into the car, put her seatbelt on, and drive home. Quickly, I would put her suitcase in her room in my house, and after about another 10 minutes, leave with my father to shul. In my family, we have a rule. My father and mother don't get up Friday night from the table. The kids do everything, and the parents sit and rest. Well, since my older two siblings were already out of the house by this time, Friday night fell on my shoulders with the help of my little brother. My Oma hated soup, and I learned that quickly. Each Shabbos, I would run into the kitchen after Rotzi and take every soup vegetable that I knew she liked, cut it up into tiny pieces, and bring it right to her. Only then would I work on everyone else's soup bowl. After dinner, my brother or I would walk my Oma upstairs, and she'd get ready for bed and go to sleep. Each week, my father lanes at a Shkava Minyan in Cleveland, Ohio, and each week in high school, Oma, without fail, would wake up early with my father, and they, along with my little brother, would head to shul. My Oma never wanted to miss a moment of her son laning from the Torah. She wanted to hear every word. Me, I was good enough with a few aliyahs, but Oma wasn't. She was proud of her son, and she wanted to be there for every word in Sheb Nafas. The best is when Kiddush came around after Minyan, because my brother would bring her the cheap chocolate chip Harv cookies that she loved, and my father would bring her a hot cup of coffee. After we all schmoozed, my little brother would walk her back to her house. As soon as Shabbos was over, a phone call would reach my house, and it would be Oma, asking if someone could come over and drop off her suitcase. So again, on Motzei Shabbat, or Sunday morning, I would go over to my Oma's house, drop off her suitcase, and hang out with her a little. I would see my Oma a minimum of twice a week, usually got together for dinner Sunday night, and I spoke with her on the phone constantly. She was not just my Oma, but someone who taught me about cherishing family and each moment we have on this earth. My Oma was also a stubborn person who always said, "I'm fine." She never wanted to be someone who showed weakness or that she needed help. She was strong. She was beautiful, and she was loving. She was one of a kind, and she was a human being like none other. However, my Oma at one point wasn't looked at as a human being, but rather as a number. She was looked at as unimportant, useless, dirty, and ugly. When the Slovak police came for her older sisters, who by then were in hiding, they said that they needed to take someone, so my Oma went instead. Little did she know what that would mean. As she told me, Mommy packed my bag, my suitcase, and Tati took me to the train station. There, he put his hands on my head for the last time, and he blessed me. He blessed me to be like Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. She was then placed on the first train ever filled with Jews heading towards Auschwitz. The first 1,000 prisoners in Auschwitz were gypsies and political prisoners, but starting at number 1,000, the Jewish people began to enter. On my Oma's arm was number 1048. 1048. The 48th Jew to enter the death camp Auschwitz. She remained in Auschwitz, Bunk 11, for a few months before being transferred to Birkenau, where she lived in Block 27 for most of her time during the war. In Birkenau, my Oma had the job title of Leichenkommando, also known as the girl who went around with the cart picking up all the dead bodies lying around and bringing them to the crematorium. That's what she did for over a year and a half. Every day, she stared death in its eye, but she continued on. She had her head shaved 7 times by the Nazis, but she continued on. She was alone in Birkenau with no family, but she continued on. My Oma never lost complete faith in Hashem, as she told me so many times. Talia, every day during the war, I said Moda Ani. Every day I prayed to God. When asked why or how she kept her faith, she would simply answer, Mommy and Tati would be so disappointed in me if I didn't. How could I do that to my parents? She grew up in a tight-knit religious home and felt it to be the ultimate betrayal to her family if she didn't keep her Jewish faith and religion. She even one year risked her life for religious service. Along with a few other girls in her barrack in Birkenau, she had a Pesach Seder with the well-known Rebbetzin Orlean. They stole raisins to use as wine and potato peels as karpas, and tried to say as much of the Haggadah as possible in a corner in their barrack. She risked her life to serve Hashem. My Oma was eventually liberated from Bergen-Belsen and is the center girl in the picture on the screen. This picture was taken 2 days after she was liberated, April 17, 1945. She survived, and then she thrived. My Oma did not stop her life after the Holocaust, she rebuilt it. She married, had 3 kids, moved to Cleveland, Ohio to set up her Jewish home with my grandfather, Mr. Michael Lautman, Alaha Shalom. Eventually, she was convinced by her good friend to start talking and teaching about the Holocaust. My grandmother went back more than 14 times on trips including March of the Living as a survivor retelling her story. When my father was 19, he went back with my Oma. 2 PBS journalists went along to videotape this historical moment. My father was videotaped standing by her plank of wood for a bed in Birkenau that she shared with 5 other girls, at the young age of 19, saying, Mommy, would you want all your children and grandchildren to come back here and hear your story personally? My Oma was silent, but shook her head yes, deep in thought and emotion. My father replied, they will. In 2004, 25 years after he made this promise, my father fulfilled it. 19 of us traveled to Poland, Czech Republic, and Slovakia to see, witness, and learn our Oma's story. Every moment of the trip was emotional, intense, difficult, but tremendously rewarding. However, each and every grandchild on the trip will say that one moment stood out the most. It wasn't by Bunk 11 in Auschwitz, where she started in the Holocaust. It wasn't standing by her plank of wood for a bed in Birkenau, Block 27, but it was in Majdanek, the camp where Oma found out her parents had died in. As soon as we got to Majdanek, she looked at my father and said, Jeffrey, I want to go. I have to go say hi to Mommy and Tati. She wanted to skip looking inside any of the bunks, walking around, seeing all the shoes, suitcases, and more that had been piled up. She wanted to go straight to the crematorium. In the crematorium, when you walk in, you see the ovens. But if you head to the left, there is another room. In the center of that room is a big black box, and inside it are bones. Bones of those that they had found around the camp and in the crematorium area. This, to my Oma, was the burial site of her mommy and daddy. This was where her parents were. As soon as we all arrived to this room with our Oma, the room became silent. My Oma started to speak slowly in Slovak, and my father and his 2 siblings began to quiver and cry hearing her speak. Eventually, my father pulled himself together to begin to translate for all of the grandchildren. Mommy, Tati, it's me. It's your baby Bryna. Look at me. Look at how wealthy I am. Look at all your kinderlach. All of our shenindala. Look at what a family I have. Look at all my kids. I'm so wealthy. I'm so wealthy. Mommy, Tati, I love you so much. I love you. For the first time in my life, at that moment, my Oma was transformed into a little girl. A little girl who lost her mommy and daddy. Who lost the unbreakable love of parents. Who lost the warmth of a home, of siblings, of a family. She became a little girl at an old age. In that moment, my Oma became real. The pain became real, the lonesomeness became real, the loss of many members of her family, and in retrospect, my family became more real than ever. I thought a lot about how this has impacted me as a person, growing up with an Oma like this, and one thing is certain. There is nothing more talked about or given respect to than Holocaust survivors. They are part of our Masorah. We must learn from them, respect them, love them, and cherish them. We must give Yom Hashoah the honor and respect it deserves. If an entire country of people who can come to a complete stop for 2 minutes for Holocaust survivors, then we here in America must do our utmost to honor and respect them. November 1st, 2008 was the last Shabbos I got to honor my grandmother. It was the last time I was in the kitchen cutting up for her soup vegetables. And it was the last time I ran over after Shabbos to bring her back her suitcase. That Shabbos, my Oma, whose memory was going, had forgotten her nightgown and unusually called to me from her room asking to borrow one. All I had was an extremely oversized, large t-shirt. She wore it to bed. 3 days later, on Election Day, November 4th, 2008, out of nowhere, my grandmother was found lying on her kitchen floor in her home. After I said goodbye to her in the hospital, touching her cold hand as she lay still in the hospital bed, I came home to change the sheets on the bed she just slept in a few nights before. Family was arriving, and we needed to get ready. I picked up the pillow, and changed the pillowcase, and there was my oversized t-shirt, folded perfectly and neatly. Climbed into the bed without changing the sheets and lied there, holding the shirt and crying. I began to think about the loss of my grandmother and the loss to Am Yisrael that they just experienced without some of them even knowing that the special, strong, beautiful, and most importantly, survivor had passed. We never can forget. We always must remember it is the least we can do for those who have continued our people, our nation,